What a dooski, guys, it's Farewell34 here with my movie review for The Circle. So the story for this one is May Holland, played by Emma Watson, gets the opportunity of a lifetime when she lands a job with the world's most powerful technology and social media company, The Circle. Encouraged by the company's founder, played by Tom Hanks, May joins a groundbreaking experiment that pushes the boundaries of privacy, ethics, and personal freedom. Her participation in the experiment and every decision she makes soon afterwards starts to affect the lives of her future friends, family, and that of humanity. So I had seen the trailers for The Circle, and in all honesty, it didn't really intrigue me that much. Just from looking at the trailer at first, it kind of felt like a stinker, but after watching the trailer a couple more times after, the ideas on technology kind of got a little more interesting. Not to mention, this film's got a pretty big named roster, with actors and actresses such as Karen Gillan, Emma Watson, Tom Hanks, and John Boyega. Well, how was it? It was just what I thought it would be, and then some. But anyway, guys, let's just get into it. So let's go start off with some of the goods. Performance-wise, I thought Karen Gillan actually did a surprisingly good job with her role. She had one of the stronger performances in this one. She also demonstrated a fair amount of range in this film. Plus, she was probably one of the more interesting characters on screen and had some more development than most. And I don't blame her. The script didn't give her very much time or make much sense in some of the situations where she got to shine, but that's not on her. But with regards just to her acting, she did good all around. Tom Hanks, He's Tom Hanks. He does a decent enough job in this one, honestly. He's that brilliant, charismatic owner of The Circle, and he's fairly likable. I'll say his backstory, as well with most of the other characters, aren't really explored too in-depth. However, I would say compared to the others, his had the most emotional depth and impact to it. Now, by far, this is probably one of the only great things in The Circle, and that's the concepts presented. The film explores the ideas on technology and playing with, technological convergence and surveillance quite a bit, and it's executed fairly well. As the film progresses, these concepts and ideas become more extreme. For example, it starts off with many disguisable cameras, but then it furthers into these other aspects, messing with people's lives and going beyond what it was intended for. This, of course, becomes an issue, presenting privacy and moral issues that make this extent of surveillance so problematic. Speaking of so, this film is good at times of presenting these issues of lack of privacy and ethical dilemmas behind seeing everything and everyone and monitoring your body and using it for commercial purposes and monetization. However, it's worth noting, at points it does get a bit ridiculous and overboard, losing its sense of reality. For example, there's this one scene where May points out the art at The Circle, and it's basically the sculpture with handcuffs, and it really reminded me of the Panopticon. Pretty much it is the many watching the few, and is the central idea to this film, and I thought it was pretty nifty. It's usually done in like prison cells where it's just like there's a station, a watchtower, the guards are watching the prisoners at all times, and there's no privacy. Not gonna spoil anything, but another thing that I actually liked in The Circle was the whole idea of this sort of live streaming culture that is starting to rise and we live in now, and all that jazz is messed around and explored in this film. This connects to the whole idea of full transparency, and I actually enjoyed those for the most part, and I think they were portrayed fairly well. However, it wasn't necessarily executed the best. Alright guys, so let's go get into some of the negatives of The Circle, and there's quite a bit. So straight up, The Circle is, it's pretty boring. For a film that, talks a lot about how exciting it is to work at places, The Circle, which is kind of like Google and whatnot. The Circle is rather bland and quite frankly boring in its storytelling, its visuals, and its dialogue. Most of the character interactions, not all, there's like one or two scenes with John Boyega and Emma Watson that are actually not that bad. But for the most part, they're not very great, and they just feel empty. Another thing about this film is it loses track of what it's supposed to be. It's just like, May gets this job, at this great place, a couple things happen, and then the film's done. What? The trailers almost made it seem like there's more to it, like there's like this evil corporation, but they never really get into that all too much. This is something that I just noticed, maybe some of you guys caught it too, but this movie's got like terrible ADR, like really stood out to me. Apparently this film had a decent amount of reshoots, and they went as recent as January of this year. Kind of makes sense with some of the issues, especially with the ADR and whatnot. In addition, the directing wasn't all too good. There's many far shots unnecessarily. There's some that I can tell were used to mask over the voiceover, plus some shots lasted for way too long. But Emma Watson is meh, she didn't do very good. She was mediocre at best. I didn't really buy into her role all too much. Her accent also started to blend slightly, and her acting was just alright. Another thing is, The Circle tries to be funny occasionally, but it fails. Now, this isn't a comedy, but it's clear that it does try at points with the humor, and it nearly falls flat on all fronts. Thinking back on it now, I honestly didn't find anything funny. There was maybe one offhand comment and a cuss towards the end that made me chuckle, but like, that's it. I think I actually did laugh. There was a very serious scene, and everyone in the audience, or at least my friend next to me, was just like, oh, and I was just laughing hysterically. He called me cynical. I don't know. It just was silly. Another thing is, this film isn't scary at all, or it's not frightening either. It attempts to scare you with the technology and the lack of consent by this large corporation watching everyone and everything, but it doesn't achieve it at all. There's almost no sense of urgency or caution in its storytelling as well. Also, you think it's May trying to overthrow this company for an event that happens, but it doesn't really work due to the film not setting any of it up, and these characters who work for the company, like Tom Hanks, they don't really do anything to make you think that they're evil. And I think they were trying to make a point with that, but it didn't really hit home because they didn't get that whole frightening aspect of it nailed in well. In addition to all of that, including stale characters, there's not really any emotional resonance in certain scenes where they're supposed to. There may have been one with this character named Mercer, because he's supposed to be the guy who isn't really with technology. He's the example that's used heavily in this film. For the scene that I'm talking about specifically, where it's kind of a confrontation, it doesn't land because one, the directing and editing, and two, Emma Watson's performance with him. It just doesn't, there's no chemistry, doesn't connect, feels awkward. Pacing in this is weird with its storytelling as well. For example, we have people like John Boyega who's in this, kind of. In the way that he's set up, you think he's gonna come back in some important way, like I mentioned, with like overthrowing this evil company, and like, kind of, but like, he's barely in this thing, guys. Don't expect to see anything too in-depth with him. Connecting to Tom Hanks' character, I feel as if they had more time for this movie, you know, flesh out certain aspects, you know, got that company to be and do a little bit more evil. Actually, then, if it had better dialogue and... You know what? Never mind. It would just make the duration of this thing longer. Overall, The Circle has a solid concept on technology and technological convergence and surveillance. However, it fails to be all that engaging and drive those messages home. Plus, it's coupled with a rather bland atmospheric characters, poor dialogue, choppy editing, and directing. I'm gonna give The Circle a 4.5 out of 10. Anyway, guys, that was my review for The Circle. What did you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. You'll probably forget about this, honestly, within a couple weeks. If you were looking forward to it, I would say not worth your full ticket price. Maybe not even the matinee. If you were really like bought into this idea, go for the matinee, I guess, but I would really recommend just watching this on Netflix when it comes out or any other video streaming service. Thanks so much for checking out this movie review. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If there's a movie you guys want me to check out next week, let me know and I'll try my best to do it. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. I'll see you next time. Peace.